Hello, I'm Keith Hilson with the Schmidt Music Trombone Shop, back with another accessory review for you. And today, I've got a couple of brand new straight mute offerings from none other than Bach. We've seen a lot of continuing mute development happening out there in the wide world. A lot of the focus has been on non-metal options. So we've seen a lot of really great fiber options, obviously wood, plastics, fiberglass, 3D printing, etc. But we really haven't had a new, metal straight mute option come on the market in the past few years at least, until Bach introduced their new Elite straight mutes here. So Bach, of course, has a history of producing mutes going back quite a long ways here, but they've got a new offering here where they're trying to change up some of the experience with this, all hand produced in the US, with a couple different options, all aluminum and aluminum with a brass bottom. So I'm going to take a play on these because they just arrived so that you get to hear them in action, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. I'm going to be playing all of this today on one of our Lake City Gen 2 large bore tenor trombones and my trusty Bach 4G mouthpiece. Thank you. うん。 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 うん. 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 うん。 as I mentioned at the beginning, we haven't had any new metal straight mute options come onto the market for at least a few years here. And I think it's really interesting that Bach was the first one to kind of come back and say, hey, we think we can add something new to the market. Again, as a maker, they certainly have experience with mutes in the past, but it's been a while since they've really done anything serious with it. And then frankly, it was kind of a surprise. I hadn't heard a lot about this, and all of a sudden they made the announcement, hey, we've got brand new, US-made hand-spun, mutes in, a couple different material options for both trumpet and trombone. So right away I said, well, gosh, I got to put hands on this. I really would like to see what's going on with this. So with Bach, talking with them, really the goal with this was trying to produce a very well-rounded straight mute, something that is going to give you that, that specific metal straight mute character, that buzz, that focus to the sound, but still trying to give us a really balanced timbre, not getting too bright or edgy, keeping some nice core to the sound, really focusing in on response and intonation. They really wanted to have a mute that, top to bottom, everything really sat in place really, really nicely, and, a couple nice features as far as finish and everything as well here. And I think they've really accomplished a lot of that. So the overall design is very reminiscent of Tom Crown for the most part. In particular, the little bit of the thinness of the shape here combined with the kind of fat bottom here as well. And kind of in the spirit of Tom Crown a little bit, they do have a little bit thicker cork as well. There are some pluses and minuses to that. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then of course, like I mentioned, they've got this in both the all aluminum and aluminum with the brass bottom, and in a really, really nice brushed finish. I think, again, looking through it all the way through right off the bat, they feel great. And it's a weird thing to say, but just like anything else with instruments, mouthpiece, whatever, there's a certain feel to these items where you can tell if they were well made. And these certainly have that as well. And all of, the spinning work, the brush work, everything, it's obviously very, very well done. Now, how do they perform? Overall, I think Bach has accomplished what they set out to. I found all the way through that I really, top to bottom, getting down from the pedal register, up to the 8th, 9th partial, etc., I felt like things still felt fairly open. The intonation in particular, I didn't even have to really move anything around. For the most part, we'll talk about that in a second. But for the most part, within the partials themselves, within the mute, I didn't really have to change anything at all. I felt with both of the mutes, the articulations came across really clearly. One of the things Bach mentions is specifically they want to have something where you could have smooth but yet clear slurs happening. And I think this has actually accomplished a lot of that. Between the two, the aluminum and the brass, I felt like the aluminum, pun intended maybe, the aluminum resonated with me more. I felt like I was able to get more of the straight mute sound that I want, a little bit more of that buzz, that character, but still keeping things, a little bit of the openness to the sound. I felt like this did that a little bit easier. I also felt like the overall response and timbre was a little bit more consistent. The brass, there was a real beautiful warmth to the brass, and I could see that being a really great mute for blending, within a section, depending on what the rest of a section is playing, or maybe what the particular usage is. If you were going for something where it's a lot more, for example, pads, if you are really more of a supporting role, I think there is a warmth that the brass really brings that's really nice, but I felt like I did have to work a little bit harder with it. And it kind of makes sense. Not only do we have just the brass, a little bit more softness of the brass, the mute is actually significantly heavier. That brass bottom really does add a lot of heft to it. So as a side note, that does mean that it was a little bit more bell heavy. So for somebody conscious of that, the aluminum is a little bit lighter option. But I also did feel that I had to work more to get that characteristic buzz that I wanted out of the sound. And there was a real kind of tipping point with the aluminum. I felt like I could find that sound a little more gradually. With the brass, I felt like I really had to push, and all of a sudden, the buzz turned on. And I felt, especially in the upper register, it pushed a little bit more. I had to work a little bit harder to get the immediacy, to get things to really center in the way that I wanted them to. And like I mentioned, I felt like overall the evenness of the response and the timbre was a little bit different. I struggled a little bit more with the brass versus the aluminum. The other interesting thing that I found was that with the brass, my intonation overall was a little bit lower. I had to push in a little bit. I had to sit a little bit higher on the pitch versus the aluminum, where again, I felt like everything sat kind of right where I expected. Now, with all of that said, there are a few caveats with that because obviously we didn't want to shave these mutes down because we have them in the shop. I did effort to really try to get them in as far as I could into the bell. I think because of the thickness of the corks, it is going to, for certain setups, it is going to take a little more moving around. It's going to take some shaping of the corks. Having gone through and tried it, again, it kind of makes sense. Bach, that these fit fairly well in Bach trombones, given that little bit broader flare. But if you don't have quite that Bach-sized flare, I think you are going to have to do a little bit of shaving to it. And of course, that's another way for us to tweak all of these experiences. One note with that, as somebody who's accidentally done this, make sure you don't go too far with shaving off the corks, and all of a sudden, all of the benefits you're trying to create are going to go completely out the window, and you're going to have to be replacing some corks. But overall, I think really a really great option. And again, I think that, price-wise, very much in line with the other gold standards, the Dennis Wick, the Joe Rals, etc. The brass is, a little bit more, about $20, $30 more than that. But like I said, I think for the right player and the right situation, I think the brass brings a lot of character to it. I think, for the price and everything, I think the Bach version is just a really great mute. I think this is another great option to have in here. And again, for me, it's just really great to see Bach continuing to be innovative. Bach and, of course, its parent company, Conn-Selmer, they've been doing a lot of really great things over the past couple of years. They've been working hard to make themselves relevant, to make sure that they're staying on top of the industry as much as they can. And I've been really impressed with the results, the thoughtfulness that they've been putting into it. And this is another little example of that. So kudos to Bach and Conn-Selmer. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you have any thoughts about what you heard, any comments, maybe you've already had a chance to try one of these here, leave them in the comments, share with our community. We'd love to have you a part of our viewing community. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel, be a part of our community, find out when we have new videos coming out. And of course, you can always find us on Facebook and Instagram. So again, thank you very much for watching.